Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's blog post. Clearly, we're dealing with some significant changes in our profession. Uh, I know everybody is dealing with the new loan application, mixed reviews across the board. I think a lot of it has to do with not only the loan officer's ability to deal with technology or what they do to prepare their borrowers up front for the loan process, but it also has to do with the software, your LOS systems, how your company has programmed them. For many of you, there are ancillary programs that run off your LOS system, and some of those interfaces are not exactly lining up, and it's causing some consternation. And so I get that. I also understand that the last couple of weeks in the bond market has been very stressful for many of you. Um, some people are struggling to explain the whys and the wherefores of what's going on and what we're likely to see. And as somebody who's been in the business quite a long time and advises people on a regular basis, I think it's important that you wrap your mind around the things that you can control and accept the things that you can't. And I think that's been something I've tried to explain to people for many years. And I don't want to not have a debate about the pros and cons of any changes that are made in the system. I'm not here to argue whether or not it should or shouldn't be, or whether the loan application is 1 page or 50 pages. My point is in all the years I've been at this, I realize that for the most part, if you're on the front lines of the mortgage business, you are governed by a series of regulatory agencies and different types of controls or from investors where your input is never going to be something that's important to them. They're going to make the changes that they deem necessary. And I think really you come down a path where you either learn to control the pieces of the puzzle that you can and adapt to the change that has been made, um, and accept that these things are there whether you like it or not. And for many of us who've been in the business, we go back to most recently, I believe TRID is the biggest change. There were so many people when TRID was first announced who really just disregarded the whole idea. There were people that didn't prepare for the changes, people who didn't see the value in it, people who didn't think that it was going to really happen. I remember traveling the country doing trainings for some companies and getting them prepared so that when TRID came in, they wouldn't miss a step, and they could issue their LEs and their CDs and close within 30 days without there being a problem. But at the same time, there were other people traveling the country explaining to loan officers and companies, hey, ignore it, don't worry about it, just get people to extend their contract to 45 days. That's not practical solution, okay? And that's not controlling the environment. And now we've all pretty much come to the conclusion that if you want to be a professional in our industry, if you want to be competitive, you'd better know how to take a loan application and get it closed in 30 days, because that needle's not going to move. And so people adapted or they got out of the business. So I get that there are loan originators out here who are being stressed and strained over two different factors. A, we've got this new system that we have to master. A lot of it looks completely different. A lot of the interfaces don't work just the way they're supposed to quite yet. I know a lot of companies are working on it. A lot of vendors are working on it. And I think it's going to take a certain amount of patience. But like with anything new, repetitions. And all of us understand the frustration when a new cell phone comes out or an update to Windows comes out or any modification that changes the way we're used to doing things. And we'll look at those changes and complain about this, that, or the other thing, or you can just go in there and learn how to adapt. And that's my point here today, is to let you know that people are working on all sides of this to try to make the transition go through. But spending any time debating about whether or not these changes are good or bad, or complaining about these changes and the impact it's having, it's not going to do you any good. They're not going to just turn around tomorrow and say, okay, guys, just kidding, we're not doing this. It's not going to happen. If anything, you're likely to see more and more change. You're likely to see more and more regulation. You're likely to see more forms. The good news is you can take control over a lot of this. And many of you already are in a position where you are taking control because you do a better job collecting documentation and verifying information and asking the questions at the pre-approval stage. And because you have that information, it makes it simpler, I won't say easy, to navigate DU and LP. And again, let's be honest, it's frustrating and it's annoying. And depending upon the company you work for and your LOS system, it can be really a strain. But I'll tell you, 15 or 20 or 25 loans down the road, you're going to pick it up. You're going to know how to make the system work. If you just remain committed to taking copious notes and solving the problems that you see and communicating with the other people at your branch level, at your company level, about how they're solving these issues, what they're seeing. And I know for many of you, it is really frustrating because that's not the way we used to do it, or this is where I used to see this information. But remember, there are many of us who started this business out with different loan application packages for different investors. There are many of us who started with paper files. There were many of us who started with having to mail away for a credit report. There are many of us who had to live with transitioning from paper to electronic, to right now where loan officers have 2 and 3 and 4 screens where they're moving information. Okay. It's challenging for everybody to stay on top of these changes. And all I'm explaining to you right now is you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to figure a workaround, control the things that you can control, accept the things that you can't, simply because the things that you can't control, it's not likely that there's going to be a simple fix. We're not going to flip a switch and everything the way it used to look will now be in front of you and auto-populate the forms the way they need to be. It's just not going to happen that way. So you have to be patient. You have to understand your process. Again, for those of you who are doing a better job up front, explaining the process and the why behind the information and why you need certain documentation, and these forms forcing you to ask specific questions, I think ultimately will be helpful, especially for you managers out there who have some weaker or sloppy or careless or, some loan officers who don't pay attention to detail. Because a lot of these things, if you're not paying attention to the details, it's not going to go through the system. And they're either going to learn how to make it work, or maybe for many of them, and we may see, maybe for many of them, it'll be time for them to find something else to do, because this is what we're dealing with. So pay attention to this stuff. Be patient with the people around you, originators, assistants, processors, underwriters, your managers. Be in communication with each other. If you find a way to resolve an issue, if you find a path that works, be sure you're sharing it. Don't let everybody fight the same battle. If you find a way, if you discover something that works within your system better, you need to be communicating. On the same token, you can't be calling your manager or your IT department every 5 seconds by throwing your hands up in the air saying, I can't make this work, fix it for me. It's going to take some time. And again, with the volatility in the rate market, I know it doesn't make it any easier, but guess what? You don't control the rate market either. So it's a good lesson right now. There are 2 things that are out there that we do not control. We do not control these changes. We do not control the rate market. But what we can control is how we handle it, how we control it, and accepting the fact that it's here, and we come up with a solution. As always, if you have any questions or comments, it's Mike at intcoaching.com. Love to hear from you. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.